Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's meeting. We are experiencing some slight technical difficulties, so we appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Good evening, and welcome to the Power Line Underground Feeder 15166 Civil Design Virtual Public Meeting. Please note that this is an open meeting as required by DC Code 2578. This meeting is being recorded and the meeting will be made available to the public. The video file with both audio and video will be shared on the project's team's website and DDOT's YouTube channel within 7 days after this meeting has ended. The meeting is being live streamed to DDOT's Facebook page at facebook.com/DDOT-DC. If you wish to not have your voice recorded, please do not ask to speak. You may be able to enter your questions or comments through the Q&A function, which we'll review shortly. If there are any technical difficulties during this meeting, feel free to call 202-309-3491. At the beginning of this meeting, everyone will be muted, and you will not be able to unmute yourself. We will be able to unmute you during the Q&A and the comment period, just to help make sure the meeting runs smoothly and there are no auditory disruptions during the presentation. To request to speak, you'll need to raise your hand feature, which we'll also cover shortly. Your camera will also be off by default, and you will not be able to share video. If you have a question during the presentation, send it to the Q&A feature. You'll find the Q&A feature by the three dots at the bottom right corner of your screen. Select Q&A, and you'll be able to send your question. To raise your hand, you will click Participants at the bottom right of your WebEx window. A new panel will appear, and near the bottom of that panel, you'll have a small hand icon that you can click to raise your hand. Today's agenda, next slide, please. You'll view a brief introductory video for the DC Plug program. You'll hear remarks from PEPCO Regional President, Ms. Donna Cooper, and you'll begin to see a series of slides that will describe the program to you in depth. Following that presentation, we'll have a Q&A session that you'll be able to ask questions. So we'll get started. Ms. Cooper, please.
Hi, thank you. We'll show the video first and then I'll make remarks. Thank you.
Will be notified well in advance of the project start date. This will include the posting of no parking signs. Construction will begin with the coordination of streets and sidewalks impacted in your neighborhood. Signs will be posted and flaggers will direct vehicles and pedestrians around construction crews. Before any digging begins, other existing utility lines that may be in the path of construction will be carefully identified and marked in the field. In some cases, small plants, trees, and grass will need to be removed from public spaces to allow for digging and placement of new underground equipment. But we will do our best to retain as much vegetation as possible. Any public property disturbed by this work will be restored to its original condition. Construction workers will use asphalt saws to cut the pavement. A backhoe will dig a trench for the placement of the distribution line. Periodically along the main primary line, manholes and tap holes will be required to house equipment and to provide access for inspections and repairs. The backhoe will also be utilized in these cases to excavate for these structures. In order to meet jurisdictional safety requirements, shoring will be provided in the trench to ensure stability. PEPCO uses either fiberglass or plastic PVC conduit to protect underground power lines. Concrete will be poured into the trench to encase and secure the conduit, and steel plates will be placed over the trench temporarily to make the road usable to vehicle traffic. After the concrete is set, the steel plates will be removed and the trench will be repaved in sections. Transformers, switches, and other ancillary equipment will be set in place. Equipment such as transformers and switches will be installed either in the roadway or the sidewalk, depending on space availability. Underground cable will be installed. Landscaping will be restored as needed and roads paved. Overhead primary electric wires will be removed from poles, but secondary service and communication lines will remain. Finally, the new underground power lines will be energized. While electricity will remain on throughout the project, there will be a short scheduled outage needed to switch from the overhead lines to the new underground system. We appreciate your patience while the District and PEPCO improve the future of electrical service for the District of Columbia residents.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Donna Cooper, PEPCO Region President. First of all, I just wanted to thank you for joining us on this evening to learn more about the DC Powerline Undergrounding Initiative. Just to provide a little bit of the historical context, this particular initiative literally dates back to 2012, and it was in response to a major event that impacted the District of Columbia, as well as other jurisdictions on the eastern coast, as well as a little bit west. And it was a major event, and it was the derecho. It was something that was unprecedented for us. I like to really characterize it almost as a hurricane on land. At that time, PEPCO was involved in its reliability enhancement plan, and we were making significant upgrades to our system around resiliency as well as reliability. But the breadth of that particular storm really led to a lot of trees being toppled, which impacted our infrastructure, bringing down our poles, bringing down our transformers. And at that particular time, our leadership, which was our CEO of PEPCO Holdings at that time, came together with Mayor Vincent Gray, and a task force was created just to look at specifically how could we look at making the infrastructure even more resilient and really thinking about the implications of climate change. The reality is that we were beginning to see more significant weather events impacting the District of Columbia, as well as just nationally. And that task force was comprised of representatives of the Public Service Commission, the Office of the People's Counsel. You had a representative from the Council of the District of Columbia, other utilities, members of communities that were part of that particular body, as well as you had some of the telecom industries involved as well. The interesting thing about that particular task force is that it was unprecedented. We worked for about a year to evaluate and come up with a plan that would look at making the system more resilient, but also really concerned about affordability. I wanted to share that this particular plan was focused on wards 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8, and is focused on those wards. And that's because when you look at the other wards across the District of Columbia, their infrastructure is already underground. So you have a lot of vegetation in the areas that we just referenced that lends itself to issues when you have storm events with trees coming into contact with power lines. And so we advanced a program that would result in focusing on our primary lines, which are on the top level of our infrastructure, in order to bring those particular lines underground, because that's where you would have the most susceptibility to trees intersecting with our wires when there were significant storm events, so that we would reduce significantly the outages experienced by our customers. This task force, as I shared, worked for a year, but it required that legislation was also passed by the Council of the District of Columbia to effectuate the plan. And the Council of the District of Columbia actually passed the legislation, and it became effective in 2014, which was the Infrastructure Improvement Financing Act. One of the things that I wanted to note is that we had to come back with subsequent legislation in 2017, and that was advanced by Mayor Muriel Bowser. Out of that particular legislation, we have a $500 million multi-year plan to underground power lines in the wards that were shared. As a regulated utility, after the council approved the legislation, it was critical that our Public Service Commission was also involved in the process, because they have to approve the plans. So we do submit what is known as biennial plans to the commission for their review and approval. And I wanted to share a little bit about the analysis, which the team will talk about further, is that we engaged in an analysis to determine which lines in the District of Columbia were more susceptible to outage events when we did have severe weather events. And a core component of this plan is also to ensure that we are undergrounding lines equitably. So it's not a situation in which we have ranked feeders. And for example, the performance of those particular feeders that are distributing service will all be within one particular ward. We did it in a way that we had equity to look at how feeders were performing, but ensuring that we were doing it in a comparable way by ward. So we're very pleased that we got to a place where our plans were approved. We recently filed our last plan, which was our third plan with the Public Service Commission. So right now, we have underground one feeder, but we have about 19 that are in progress. And the feeder that we will be addressing on this evening is specific to Ward 8. And we're very excited about this opportunity because it will definitely result in more resilient service for our customers. But it's critical for you to know about the project well in advance of us moving forward to actual construction, so that you can have any questions that you may have answered. We want you to know that this is not the last time that we will be connecting with you, and that we will have many touch points in this process to ensure that you are engaged throughout the process. I will turn it over now to Yamani with PEPCO, as well as Anthony, to talk a little bit more about the construct for this particular plan and additional details on the construction aspects as well as the timeline. So thank you for being with us on this evening.
Thank you, Donna. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining. This is Yamana Kidana, Project Manager for DC Plug from PEPCO. If we go back one slide, and I want to talk about how that $500 million budget is actually paid. So the $500 million for this DC Plug project to underground up to 20 feeder, as Donna indicated, is paid through 250 million of that is paid through PEPCO, and 187.5 million is paid through the district, and the remainder 62.5 million is paid through DDOT capital improvement funding. Now, both the PEPCO portion and the district portion are recovered through separate surcharge on customer bills. As stated, the scope of the program is to provide resiliency against major storms and improve the reliability. It's a multi-year program to underground up to 20 feeders of the overhead distribution lines. The project span is between 6 to 8 years, and as discussed earlier, the construction of the first feeder began early in 2019. Next slide. Now, this slide and the next slide are going to show the scope of the program. It's an animation that just shows, you know, what happens in today's world when the system is overhead. And the next slide is going to show what happens to the system as we keep these lines overhead. Here, as you can see, that there's a tree that's going to fall on this animation at the middle top of the animation. As the tree falls and hits the primary main line and lateral lines, you can see an entire neighborhood, the color changing from green to red to indicate that the houses are experiencing a power outage. And like I discussed, the scope is to place these primary main lines and the primary laterals underground while keeping the secondaries overhead. Now, the difference on the second slide is when the same tree falls down, because the primary is placed underground, it's not going to impact an entire neighborhood. So they all remain green. But if a tree falls on the secondary line, which we're going to keep overhead, you're still going to see outage. But as you can see, the scope is very minimal compared to an entire neighborhood taken out of service. So that's the general scope, but I want to make sure that everybody understand that we are keeping the poles in place because they will be supporting the communication lines, the secondaries, and the service lines. We will be removing the existing overhead primary line once we place the system underground. So that's the scope. With that, I introduce Anthony Soriano from DDOT to discuss the scope further.
Thank you very much, Yamani. I'm Anthony Soriano with DDOT. I act as the Deputy Program Manager for the DC Plug with DDOT, and I thank you all for joining us again. At this point, I will discuss our current design timeline and status. We kicked off this design last year in May. We've had, to this point, 2 design submissions, our 30% and 65% submissions. Back in October, we did attend an ANC meeting to introduce the project at that forum. Today, March 3rd, we're hosting this open house. We are expecting a 100% design submission in April. There is a round of comments that may come through, and then our final plan, specification, and estimate submission is expected in May, and that's what we use to then advance to our construction procurement. Next slide, please. So with that construction procurement process, we're anticipating the project to be under construction this time next year in the spring of 2023. Once the civil construction is completed, the electrical construction will begin, and that's anticipated for fall of 2024. So about 1 year of civil construction before the electrical construction commences. Feeder 15166 is anticipated to be energized in that winter of 2025, and then full completion in the spring of 2025. And please note that these dates are subject to change. We'll take any opportunity to advance the schedule and get things done quicker when possible, but of course outside factors could result in delays, but we will be sure to keep you all informed throughout the process. This slide shows us some scope items associated with the work. When we get into construction, contractor will mobilize, they'll install their erosion and sediment control, which is essentially protection at the inlets with the work that we're going to be doing to prevent sediment from getting into the inlets. There'll be tree protection installed as well. Then the actual duct bank and the manholes, tap holes, transformer enclosures. We'll follow that work with roadway restoration, replacing any pavement markings that were disturbed during the construction. And then as noted previously, our electrical work will follow that civil construction. Next slide, please. Here we'll see a few of the structures that are installed with the program work. Top left is a transformer enclosure. This one is located in this picture between the curb and the sidewalk, which gives you an idea of the scale. It's approximately 3 to 4 feet wide and 5 to 6 feet long. Our top right photo is a switch manhole in sidewalk. The majority of that structure is not seen. What you do see is the frame and cover for the access point. These structures are much larger, but are placed underground where all you see again is that access point. And then the bottom photo is a tap hole, which is approximately 3 foot by 3 foot. And this one again is located just behind the curb. Our next slide will show us our project area with Malcolm X Avenue at the southern border, Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue to the east. We have Lebaum Street southeast towards the north, and 2nd Street southeast at the west for our limits of this work. Our next few slides are going to move through rather quickly. These are going to show us the proposed locations of the underground duct bank, which is in light blue, and the structures in dark blue. I want to note that all of our work is within the public right-of-way. At no point do we go onto private property for our work. Anybody interested in taking a closer look at these slides, they will be shared. This whole slide will be shared on our DC Plug website. And you can also reach out to the email that'll be provided later in the presentation. and directly request the information from our DC plug team. So again, the light blue is the underground duct bank locations. Dark blue are locations of those structures that we saw a few photographs of earlier. And all of this work, again, is within the public right-of-way and public space. Next slide, we talk about our maintenance of traffic, and it's key that we maintain our accessibility for residents and businesses throughout the footprint of our project. There will be some parking impacts temporarily. We will be providing emergency no parking signs with the minimum 72-hour advance notice of the locations that we'll be working through. It's also important that we provide safe accommodations for our pedestrians and cyclists throughout the construction. And our public outreach team is going to be coordinating regularly. I joke that you'll probably get tired of hearing from us, but it's our job to make sure that you're completely informed, and we make sure we do a great job of that and providing you with updates throughout the construction. The next few slides are some general maintenance of traffic layouts. Pretty typical work being done behind traffic drums, maintaining traffic flow when possible. If any event requires reduction to just one lane of traffic, there will be flaggers that will be out to make sure that traffic can safely pass and is monitored throughout the work. And then at this point, I would like to turn it over to our communications lead. I think Raisha is going to be presenting our next slide to speak about the integrated communication strategy. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Anthony. My name is Raisha Quarry. I'm with the communications team, and we're talking about how much we're going to be out there talking to you guys. I feel like Don has talked about it, and Anthony talked about it, and you probably will get tired of us. So DC Plug has created an education plan to make sure that we are engaged with the stakeholders as much as possible. So with that, during the design phase, we had these open houses. We've been out to the ENCs. We spoke with the council member, and we will be back, like you said. After this, you'll get phone calls. Certain customers may get phone calls, and we'll be having on-site visits from members of our team to talk about TE enclosures in the area. Once we hit the construction phase, there will be those constructions spring for this one. So during that time, we have 1 month prior to construction, you guys will get notification. And then we have a 14-day notification and then a 7-day notification. And it's not limited to just that. So we will always have we'll also have a pre-construction meeting, and then we'll have meetings as needed going forward. For the cons collateral, you'll see things on social media. DC Plug doesn't have its own social media, but you can see it on DDOT and PEPCO social medias. And fact sheets and door hangers will be sent out to you guys as needed, and we'll just be in constant communication with you, to be honest with you guys. If you have any questions, we have our project hotline, and then our website. We're launching a brand new website, so by the time this is in construction, it'll definitely be up. It should be up within a few weeks, so we're really excited about that. And if you have any questions, of course, email us at any time. That's all I have for communication. Is that mine?
Thank you, Raisha. Just a couple reinforcements around how you can contact the team after tonight's meeting. On the screen before you is the website, www.dcpluginfo.com. You can send questions to questions@dcpluginfo.com. You can call us 1-844-758-4146. And as Raisha just said, you can see us on Twitter and social media. I am looking at our attendees list and I don't see any hands raised. Are there any comments from anyone? Feel free as we finish to raise your hand if you choose to comment. We want to remind everyone that as a recipient of any federal assistance, DDOT has to ensure that its programs, activities, and public meetings are conducted in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. We'd ask you to please scan the QR code on your screen and fill out the form. That form helps us to ensure that we're doing outreach in the way that it should be done, and that we're in compliance with the act. So please take a few minutes to scan that QR code and provide your comments or concerns around the outreach for this meeting. Are there any hands raised or questions?
There are currently no hands raised. Just as a friendly reminder, those of you who have called in directly on your phone, you can press asterisk or *3 to raise your hand, and we may unmute you so you can ask a question. For those of you who may be joining on the mobile app or the desk, that you can just tap the 3-dot icon for more options and select raise hand. If you are on the desktop app, then you may access the participants panel to find the raise hand icon.
I noticed that Miss Wendy Glenn from the council member's office is on the call with us tonight. Miss Glenn, do you have any comments? Miss Glenn, can she be unmuted?
Thank you. I did. Thanks, Monica. I was like, I can't unmute.
Not a problem.
My concern is how will we get this message out to our residents who are not internet savvy or who don't know anything about accessing the information here. I don't know whether or not, I know we received it, but we received it. I thought the meeting was going to be on the 9th and it was tonight, so I jumped on. And I would normally post this on social media, all of our social media outlets, and put it in our social media platforms. I'm sorry, and put it out. But I didn't get an opportunity to do so. So how soon can we get information to us so that we can get it out to the residents?
So Wendy, thank you so much for joining. This is Donna. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing well. So apologies for that. So I will just share, for example, that you didn't have opportunity to get the information out through your normal channels. We can coordinate with you again to execute another event that's similar. That would be an open house so that you'll have an opportunity to get the information out through your listservs and through the vehicles that you use. But number two, we are also concerned about individuals, as you shared, we're not utilizing the social media type platforms. So there is a dial-in that individuals can call us to directly engage with us on the project. We can mail and share information directly with customers on this project. There will even be the outreach team will even be going like literally almost like door to door to engage customers within the area in which this project will be occurring. So we can meet customers exactly where they are. And we look forward to coordinating with you just to think through the vehicles that we're already using and ways in which we may be able to enhance that further, just to make certain that individuals know that this is coming. And we wanted to start very early before we even at a construction phase so that we can begin having the conversations and looking at the best ways to engage as well.
Thank you.
And so what we'll do also, we can send to your office kind of the fact sheet and other information to you as well in terms of how you can help get it out through your vehicles. And they're used to receiving information from you in terms of our customers and your constituents and the residents of Ward 8. But we can think creatively as well if there needs to be anything that's also mailed to customers, or that we do some drops within the community as well.
Okay, I have one last question if I can ask.
I just want to add 1 second. I think from an outreach point of view, our team may have done a delivery door-to-door. I'll let Raisha chime in because we have distributed, in addition to advertising these, we have distributed a notification via I guess I'll let Raisha chime in on that.
Thanks, Yamani. Yeah, the outreach team for this feeder did go door to door, so they did reach people that weren't accessing internet. So everyone should have received a door hanger or an invitation door to
Yes.
door, and that would be affected, that would be impacted in the area. So going forward, we'll always implement a grassroots door to door option for any type of outreach that we do.
Okay, thanks, Raisha.
No problem.
But my concern is we are a ward of renters, and we are a ward of rental housing providers that usually are not easily accessible. So in that regard, how are we handling that?
So Wendy, this is Donna again. I'm getting an echo for some reason.
A bad echo as well. Yeah.
Yeah. What about now?
Now it's fine.
Yeah, so let's think through, based on your experience, what are some of the better ways in which we may need to do something just a little bit differently in order to ensure that we're getting the information directly to those that may be renters, et cetera. Because I'm going to ask Raisha, with the drop-offs that we are doing when we do go to apartment complexes, are we dropping them at the front desk for them to share? Just what is that process that we are using?
I'll jump in briefly. In this feeder territory, all the apartments are not gated or fenced. So we were able to access the low-rise apartment buildings within this feeder boundary. So we were able to get into buildings. Ms. Glenn, you're correct. In many of our areas, we have buildings like yours where we can't access the gate or there's a locked entry door to get in, and that's a challenge. But in this case, that hasn't been the challenge.
Thank you, Monica.
And in areas, I'm sorry, Ms. Glenn. I was just going to say, in areas that we can't get access, we've used yard signs in the past. So if that's something that we need to do in this area prior to construction, we can put a yard sign outside of the area and then put a QR code so that people are able to access it that way, or just go to the link that's on there, or call the number that will also be on there.
Yeah, that would be beneficial.
Okay, we can do that. We definitely make sure we do that going forward.
So I wanted to ask my follow-up question, and as it relates to the construction piece, and Monica probably will be able to understand this because this is what we deal with. Is there a plan? Because I know where I live, when there's a lot of construction going on and a lot of unearthing, we get an increased population of rodents. So I'm trying to find out whether or not we are thinking about just the onset and we're coming on to spring and summer. So just dealing with the weather and the construction process, are we thinking about how we can do some preemptive strikes on abatement to actually protect our residents from an increase in rodents during this phase of construction?
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Anthony as well as Yamani just to address how we are going to prepare for appropriate and timely rodent abatement.
Yeah, that's a very good question. This is Anthony speaking. And I think what you'll notice with this particular work, the majority of it is within the roadway. So we're going to be excavating from curb to curb. So that increase in visible rodents from like a standard DDOT full roadway reconstruction going behind the curb, I don't think we'll notice it as much. Not that it wouldn't occur, but we do include within our special provisions of the contract and within the contract documents a requirement of our contractor to provide the rodent abatement. As far as anything in advance of construction, I don't know specifically. I can see if there are things that we can include as an option. But again, with the majority of this work being trenching in the roadway, the experience on our end is that it's less or not at all, which I hope is reassuring. But again, we do include in our contract documents a provision for the contractor to address that rodent issue that you bring up.
Thank you, Ms. Glenn. Does that conclude your questions?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Conchita Mays Crawford has a question.
Okay, the question is, will Ward 8 residents be hired for the flagger jobs when the work begins in Ward 8? Although there's no plans for specific hires of Ward 8, our DDOT contracts and the plug program has a goal of 100% of new hires being district residents. So we include that in our contract language, and not only are the prime contractors responsible for following that, but their subcontractors are also to follow that as well. So again, we don't have anything that specifically addresses the residents of Ward 8, but DC residents are included in that provision. But we're happy to have discussions to see if there's ways to work with the Ward 8 residents and make sure that they're aware of these opportunities when they come up.
Mr. Troy Shockley has a question. Troy Shockley.
Yeah, it's in the Q&A chat there. So Mr. Shockley's question is, will residents lose power? Yamani, would you like to cover that one?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that question. So during construction, residents will not lose power. We will keep the overhead system intact and servicing residents until all the underground system is installed and ready to go. So the only time residents will see their power taken out of service is when we are switching over from the overhead to the underground system. And we'll definitely make sure that we provide advanced notification of when that's going to happen. We'll stay in constant communication. And usually that's around 4 hours, we say, but usually we get it done faster than that. So the only time you will see an outage is when we have a transfer from the overhead to the underground, and then you will be notified way in advance on when that's going to happen.
Okay. The next question comes from Ms. Stephanie Fu. How were the communities chosen for the program?
I'll turn that over to Yamani as well as Anthony, just to talk about the criteria. And as I stated earlier when I was speaking, is that this program is focused on wards 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. But Yamani and those will be able to address how feeders were ranked across those particular wards to determine which ones were selected to be undergrounded.
Thank you, Donna. So as stated, yeah, we have selected Ward 3, 4, 7, and 8 because they have the most overhead system within the district. And then among those wards, we rank the feeder based on their performance. How have they performed in the last 10 years? So there is a model that was created in collaboration with the DC Public Service Commission. According to that, the feeders that are ranked the highest in each ward are identified as candidates for undergrounding and shared with the commission and have received approval by the commission. So that's the basis for selection of the feeders.
Have we missed anyone with a question? Or are there other questions?
Yes, so Conchita Mays Crawford, apologies if any mispronunciation of your name there, asked, in the video, a brief outage was mentioned. Can you describe what residents and businesses should expect? This may have been addressed by a previous response from Yamani, but if there's anything to add.
No, that's exactly, I just addressed it. Yep, that outage when we switch over from the overhead to the underground is the only outage you will see associated with the project.
And it looks like Wendy Glenn has asked, would you be able to send the council member's office the abatement plan?
If that's related to the rodent control, absolutely.
Are there other questions?
I do not see any additional questions, nor are there any hands raised.
I want to refresh everybody's memory back to how to contact us. If there are questions or concerns following the meeting, there are multiple ways to contact us. Mayor, can you please flash the last page again? Through the website, www.dcpluginfo.com, through email by questions@dcplug.info.com. You can call old-fashioned way, 844-758-4146, or interact on social media, Twitter at PEPCO Connect, hashtag DCPlug, or D.DC, hashtag DCPlug. Want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to ask any questions. So if you've thought of some more, we're still here for questions. Please be sure to make sure that you fill out our Title VI form so that we can capture information on how we're performing outreach to make sure that we're meeting the community's needs and sharing information about this very important project. The QR code is on your screen. You're able to open your camera and go right to this page to complete the form. It looks like we're all out of questions. Please know the team is available for your resource after this meeting, but we thank you all for being here and for being so attentive to our presentation, and look forward to hearing your questions and continuing to close the communications loop around this important feeder. Thank you for your time. Ms. Cooper, do you have anything, final words before we leave?
No, just wanting to thank everyone for attending. Thank you for the great questions that have been raised. We will definitely follow up in providing the information that has been requested by Ms. Wendy Glenn. And also we will follow up with her on any additional ideas or suggestions she has for engaging the community. So thank you. And also working with you perhaps on another open house so that you can share the information with a broader segment of the community as well. So thank you. Have a wonderful and safe evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.